In this demo, I'm going to demonstrate the full capabilities of Spotfire using an Airbnb dataset. This is going to encompass Spotfire 12 actions, ModelOps, data streaming, data functions, and mods. So to start with, I have a set of listings and reviews from Airbnb. These listings have attributes such as the description and title, the name of the location, the host response time, what neighborhood they're in, their ratings, their latitude and longitude, how many bedrooms and bathrooms there are, and then linked with these listing IDs is an ID of different reviews and what different guests left for the reviews. So to start with, let's look at AI recommendations. If I want to go to these listings and I want to see, let's say I want to see how the recommendations vary by price, I can select price and the AI recommendations will start calculating for me. And this is showing that there's a relationship with the room type. So the price for an entire place is much higher than a price if you have a shared room or a private room. That's to be expected. We also have a relationship with the number of bedrooms. As there's more bedrooms, the prices tend to increase. There's also a relationship with the cleaning fee. As the cleaning fee increases, so does the price. That tends to increase as well. So we're getting certain insights just from the AI relationships. The AI relationships are both linear and nonlinear relationships that are found by the Spotfire recommendation engine. If you like a relationship but you don't like the visualization, you can click more like this, and you can see different visualizations that are used with that relationship. So there's a whole slew of insights for data, exploratory data analysis, and those are using the native Spotfire visualizations. But we also have custom-built Spotfire mods. And Spotfire mods allow JavaScript developers to create easy-to-use visualizations that anyone can use without any coding. So for instance, if I want to use this sunburst chart, I can click this sunburst chart to bring this in. I'll make this a little bit easier to see with a lighter color. And let's say we want to do a hierarchy here of maybe the city, and we'll do the number of bedrooms, and we'll do the number of bathrooms. So you can see I'm configuring this just like a native Spotfire visualization, no code required. And I can see here that the 94% of these listings are in the Boston area. Of these listings, of the Boston ones, there's 62% of the total listings that are in Boston in one bedroom, and then a little over half of all the listings are in Boston with one bedroom and one bathroom. So that's a Spotfire mod for you. Very easy to use, and it automatically works with brush linking and markings across visualizations. So now let's take a look at some data functions. Data functions are scripts that are used with Spotfire's inbuilt Python and R engines. They can also be extended to use with ModelOps and TIBCO Data Science, TIBCO Data Science Team Studio, and Statistica, as well as with cloud platforms such as AWS and AWS services like Recognize, Azure Cognitive Services. These can all be extended through data functions. Here I'm just going to do a simple NLP sentiment analysis using the inbuilt Python engine. So I can select NLP. This is my NLP Python toolkit. It's using these Python packages, Panda, Spacey, Space Text Blob. It has a little description here. The neat thing is that I can just configure this without any coding required. I'm telling it to use a reviews table. I'm telling it to look at the text column, and I'm going to just limit this to 200 rows just to make this run quickly, and I'll hit OK. And this will run a little bit on a few rows just to make sure everything computes right, and it'll tell me at the end what the outputs of this data function will be. I have a sentiment results, I have part of speech results. I'm going to exclude that. I'm not as interested in the part of speech, and I have NER, named entity recognition results. I'm not interested in that as well, so I'm going to exclude that. I just want to keep my sentiment results, and I'll hit OK. And now we see this executing on all of the 200 rows. And what's nice is that similar to a Spotfire mod, where developer, maybe a JavaScript developer that can create a mod, and then anyone can use it without no code. Same thing with a data function. A data scientist or advanced analyst may create one of these scripts, and then anyone can use them without any coding required. So it really extends the capability of the business analyst. So now let's say I want to bring a word cloud in, and I want to look at, for instance, let's say I want to look at the different polarities and the phrases. So we can see in the reviews that great was recognized a lot as a script, very comfortable. And I can click these and nothing's really happening on the left chart because the two tables are separate. So the Spotfire AI recommendations not only recommend visualizations, but it'll actually recommend data transformation steps. So if I click this text column, you'll see that it says link data tables. It recognizes that this column has a match in the reviews table, so I can link those data tables with one click. And now when I click great, we can see the listings that have great in the reviews, listings that are comfortable in the reviews, those that said nice. And to visualize this a little bit further, I'm going to go ahead and create a details visualization, which is a text card. And in this text card, I'm going to card it by the text, and I'm going to give it the content. I'm going to give it the text as well. And so now we can see nice. So where there's nice, this place is very quiet, nice place. Amanda is nice. The accommodation, Andy was accommodating and nice. We see this word nice in all the reviews. I can drill through my reviews in this very brush linked marked fashion. And this data function, if I go into my data canvas, I can see that this is a sentiment table that was brought out by the data function. And if I want to see how that was that data flow, I can go into this data flow of the data canvas where we see the reviews table. This is the input data that I brought in. When I told it to bring the reviews table, this is the text column that was brought in. I told it use text, and that's the name of the column. And that runs through this Python script, and I can see the actual Python script here that was run. And this was the script and the module that was created by a data scientist on our team, and that was instructed to do the sentiment results as an output. The part of speech and identity recognition were excluded. If I wanted to change that, I can go ahead and include it and just go to that options, and now it's going to actually include the named entity recognition as well. This will take probably about 30 seconds to run, but the advantage of this canvas is that it gives full visibility to the analyst on what's happening with their data. So they don't need to understand the intricacies of a certain script, but they can still understand their data flow. So here we go. I get the part of speech results. I can click on that and I can see proper noun, adjective, verb, noun, things like that. All right, so going on, now let's say I want to do something maybe a little more useful. I want to predict the prices of the Airbnbs based off of the characteristics of the Airbnb listing, such as these variables: bedrooms, bathrooms, number of beds, the review score ratings, things of that nature. So this is the training data set. I have a table that is used with my data canvas, where I can actually I can take my clean listings data and I can actually split that into a test set using a filter transformation. I just gave it a filter transformation there, and here you're seeing like the full data processing, data wrangling capabilities, where you can bring in different data and you can transform them and see this automatically logged audit trail of what's happening to your data. So this is the training space, the summary statistics of the data, and I'm going to build a random forest model on this. So similar to the NLP, I'm just going to type in random forest here, and I have a random forest modeling data function that will also write out a PMML file. And I'm going to do this because I want to use a PML later with ModelOps. So right now I'm just going to take this. I'm going to take the listing train table. My target column is from my training data set, and I'm going to take the price table. The problem type, I can do a regression or a classification. I want to do a regression here. And the PMML path, I have this stored in my document property. I have this stored in my DXP for ease of use, and this is right now to my desktop as an Airbnb PMML file. So I'll hit OK, and I'll hit OK, and this will run on all of the data that I have in my training test. So just a few thousand rows of data. And you can see here I have this test set with prediction that came out. I also have this feature importance. I'm going to use both of these. So here I hit OK. And you can see this running the data function on the remaining rows of data, and it's pretty quick to compute. I now have a price and a prediction column, so I'll grab these two, and I want to do a scatter plot. Spotfire is automatically going to recommend a scatter plot when I multi-select a couple numerical columns, so I can drag and drop this in, and that easy to create a scatter plot. I'm going to go ahead and remove this listings clean, and let's just look at this scatter plot of data. I want to look at the residual, so I'll do price minus prediction. And I want to color this by a 3-point grading scale. So let me add a 3-point gradient right there. And just to make this easier to see, I'll draw y equals x line so we can see where the predictions and price should line up. So here we're seeing the price on the y-axis, prediction on the x-axis, and we can see that the price is predicted to be higher than what the prediction says it should be on certain Airbnbs up here. The price is predicted to be lower than the prediction says it should be down here. So there's some underpriced and overpriced Airbnbs. We also have a feature importance table. I wanted to bring that in and show you that this was generated from my data function as well. So feature importance, I can grab importance and I can grab feature, and this will recommend a bar chart. I'll go ahead and draw that bar chart in there. I'll rotate it horizontal. It's pretty crowded there, so I just want to show the top 15 of these values. And we can see that the ID column is in there. So what I can do is I can actually change my my data function by going back to my data function properties. And what I'm going to do is set my optional parameters ID columns. I'm going to tell it that in my listing my train data set, let me select a column in my listing train data set, and I'm going to tell it to look at the ID column as an ID column, and that's just going to exclude it from the modeling. So I'll hit OK and let that finish computing. So this is computing now in the bottom right, and when that finishes, then we'll lose ID from our feature importance table. So let me go ahead and clean some of this up. And this is computing. It should just take a few more seconds to finish. And what we're seeing here in our feature importance is that, there it goes, it finishes. What we're seeing is the number one feature for fitting this model and predicting price is the number of bedrooms. Then it's the zip code. Then it's the bathrooms, and it's the latitude. So if I go ahead and these are two different data tables, so I'm going to manually go through and actually take this test set with predictions, relations. I'm going to relate this to my listings table. So I have two tables that that I can drill across. So I'm going to do this relation manually here. Now I can select certain data, and we can see this here. So we saw that zip code was one of the features that predicted that the price affected the price, right? So if I go to these lower priced predictions, we're seeing these farther zip codes out. Now if I go to the higher price predictions, we can see that these are downtown in Boston. These are closer to the city center. So it's finding zip codes, finding the bathrooms, finding latitude. We can also see, let me change this to drill down on the markings. We can see that these listings also have a high number of bedrooms, a high number of bathrooms as well. Now I can do these calculations and these data functions on the entire data set, but let's say I only wanted to do it on a smaller data set on markings and have something truly interactive. So here I can actually do a new random forest. I'm going to just do a random forest again, but I'm going to do it on this marked data. My input data this time I'm going to take as a data table, and I'm going to take it as a test set with predictions, and I want it to limit it by the marking. The target column, I want to also bring in a column. I want to bring in from the listings. I want to bring in from the test set with prediction, and I want to bring in the column. I want to bring in the column price as my target column. Also want to limit that by marking. I'm going to bring this a regression. And then the fields I want to ignore, two columns from this test set with prediction. I want to ignore the prediction column. I don't want that to be in my model. I want to take the ID column out. I don't want that to be in my model. And so from here, I'll hit, I also want to refresh this automatically, and I'll hit OK. And now this is executing on just that marked data. Has automatically recognized that this data table is similar to the results of my other random forest data table. So it's actually recommending that I stack these together by just looking at the data schemas and recognizing from some of the heuristics. But I want to actually have these as separate data tables. So I'm going to skip all recommendations. And when I skip all recommendations, I'm going to have another feature importance table and test data. So now we'll hit OK, and let's look at this feature importance table. So I'm going to grab these two, and I'm going to grab this bar chart, and I'll put this bar chart as a horizontal bar chart. And let's again do a show a height of 15 values. Now what we're seeing is for the selected data, we can select data and have an automatic recomputation of that data. So as I mark certain values, we're recomputing this data function and we're seeing what matters the most. So the latitude here is making a big difference in why these are lower priced Airbnb. In these lower priced Airbnbs, the latitude is making the big difference. And the higher priced Airbnbs, we can select these higher priced Airbnbs and see what's making a difference in that feature from that feature set. We're seeing latitude and longitude, we're seeing review score, we're seeing number of bathrooms. So we can drill through this and we can see with this interactive marking the results of these data functions, these Python data functions, live right onto the dashboard itself. So this helps the data scientists explore how their model is working and understand that a little bit better. Now let's say I wanted to take an action on this. Okay, so we have these different visualizations, we have these different insights, but I want to take an action on this. Let me move some of this over real quick, excuse me. Okay, so what I can do is now in Spotfire 12 I have actions available, and for this action I can take a analysis. I can take a Flogo app from TCI, and this is DS write to AWS, and I want it to work on. I want to give it a value of Neil. I'm going to be the assignee. And for a comment, I want it to prompt me each time. And for the records, I want to take it from my test set with predictions table. I want to take the ID column for each row, and then I want to aggregate it by the ID column as well. And I want it to be based on a marking. So I can also change the little icon. If I want an icon, I'm going to leave this as a little lightning bolt. I'm going to hit next. This shows me the flow of how this action is going to work. And I can hit done. And now I can assign this action. So I can add this on here. And I have the option to have a floating button, a right-click menu option, or a title bar button. So this action I'm going to leave as a floating button, and I'm going to assign the service, this action, to this trigger. And you see this floating button appear. So I'm going to close this, and now that I have his actions assigned, I can go ahead and highlight some of these, and you can see that these have no assignee or comment, but on an action, I'm going to write, hey, these are overpriced. Airbnbs. And I'm going to hit next, and it's going to show me the rows that I selected, and it's going to ask me if I want to approve this. I'm going to approve this, and what this is actually going to do is sign in to my TIBCO Cloud Actions, and I'm going to authorize this with my TIBCO Cloud Actions. You only have to do this the first time, and what this did is just wrote to Redshift. So if I go to my listings table, I have it joined with the Amazon Redshift database, and I can go ahead and I can see the details of this connection and the different variables coming in on that table, and I can reload this. So if I reload this and look at data, I can see that these 4 IDs came in with I have this very small table with just the assignee and the comment, and when I look at my table now, I can now see the assignee and the comments here. So now along this table, I have these values that are written into the database, and this can be flagged for more follow-up with a different business analyst, a different business group. Now, it's important to note that I just did a simple database write-back, and I used this service that I developed in TIBCO Cloud Integration, this Flogo app. But what I can do with this is I can write to S3 as an option. I can write to Redshift as an option. Those are 2 different flows that I developed in this Flogo app, but I really have a ton of possibilities. I can write to Kinesis. I can use Adobe Sign to check the status of a document, to download a document, to send for signing, to email a document around. I have Azure Data Factory. I have Box. I can delete files, upload files. DocuSign is in here, check status, create envelope, Dropbox is in here. I even have SAP HANA, and I have Snowflake and Slack. There's all kinds of options. There's hundreds of different actions that I could build into this Flogo app, and then once I build into that app and I deploy that app, it will work with this simple click of this action button. So really, really valuable there. Now, we also have real-time as well. So Spotfire real-time, right now I'm working with a TIBCO Cloud data stream. A TIBCO Cloud data stream is a cloud-based streaming flow that can read from Kafka, it can read from MQTT, it can read from a database, a CSV file, a REST API. So this is a stream that I have going on new Airbnb listings, and we can see these points actually appearing and new points coming in as new data and new listings are coming in. So I actually have this just on a 3-minute window. We have sub-second latency with TIBCO streaming, and Spotfire will give 1-second latency on the display of the values. And you can see I have an action button here. I can actually grab some of these rows and take an action on streaming data as well. So this is just going to improve my speed to insight and speed to action, really. I have my insights, I have my actions, and as you saw, as I selected some points here, you can see that they'll highlight. What we have is one thing that's unique to Spotfire is this ability to do brush-linked markings and calculations on streaming data. It's not just a simple display, it's fully immersive and fully interactive. Okay, so now for the last part of my demo, I'm going to show you ModelOps. So we have these data functions in Spotfire. We talked about these data functions that we can show and we can calculate within Spotfire. But what you don't always want your modeling to be embedded into the Spotfire app. You don't want your models themselves to be embedded in the Spotfire. You can use Spotfire as the engine to do your modeling. Sure, you may use a different tool to do your modeling and work on your training data. But what you really want is a abstraction layer where you can manage your models outside of the data scientists can manage the models outside of the analyst platform. The analyst can just focus on the business analyst problems. So what we have with ModelOps is we have a fully TIBCO agnostic platform where you can really use models from any platform, and you can use PMML models, you can use TensorFlow models, you can use H5 models, you can use any scoring, any type of language you want for modeling languages, and you can use any type of data source you want. So what we have is an ability to take a model. And what I did earlier is I created a PMML model, if you remember, from my data function. So I can upload a model. Oops. Let me click the right button here. Upload an artifact. And when I clicked upload an artifact, I can go down to my Airbnb PMML file. This is what I wrote out earlier with my data function. And I can take this and I can actually upload it to my project file that I have, my project folder that I have in ModelOps. I can click upload and upload that. I already have a model in here that I want to use, this Airbnb 2 model. I can go here, I can create schemas that will extract from the PMML file. And when I have these schemas, I can then go into scoring flows. So I have a price prediction scoring flow. And here I can set up from a template. I can load template flows. I can bring in Python scripts. I can bring in metrics and calculations, data matrices, scoring nodes, things like that. So in my input node, I have a here it is. I have my input schema that I loaded from my PMML file. I have a scoring node, which actually uses the Airbnb PMML file, and it writes out a output of a single field, which is my price field. Now, these are just the scoring flows, but the scoring flows can be put into pipelines. They should be put into scoring pipelines. And what we have here is a mapping of data sources and data sinks. The input is a data source, and the output is a data sink. And so that data source and data sink can be Kafka, MQTT, API, it can be CSV files. So you have TDV as well, typical data virtualization. So you can really have a multitude of different inputs and outputs for data sources and data sinks. And from there, you can actually deploy Kubernetes pods for scoring pipelines, and you can monitor those deployments. So here you can see Jeremy has some deployments going. What I'm going to do is actually score some new data. This is actually looking at a different data table. This is looking at my test data. So I trained my model on my training data. Now I have my test data. And so if I want, for instance, to maybe do a prediction on these three values, let's set up a data function that uses this ModelOps data function integration. So here I have typical ModelOps data function, and I say Spotfire demo. That's what I'm going to name it. And I need to get my ModelOps server. So I'll just grab my ModelOps server, put that in here, and I need to log in. And I can select my project from all the projects in my ModelOps instance. Here I see the Airbnb project I'm going to select. I have a couple scoring flows in there. I'm going to take the price prediction scoring flow, and my target environment I'm going to have as a development. So one thing we didn't talk about, I'll talk about in a second, is the different environments in ModelOps. So I can run this, and I want to refresh this automatically, and I want to run this on my test data set. I want to bring in all of my columns into that input, and I want this to react to a marking as well. And for my output, I'm going to do a data table named output, and I'm going to just hit OK. And you can see here on the bottom right, this is starting to create a pipeline. This is deploying a pipeline for scoring. So if I go into ModelOps and I look over here, you can see a few seconds ago, Neil Kanungo created this job Spotfire demo. and this is now created its own data channel for the pipeline, and the pipeline is getting ready to score the data. So the first time that I do this, I need to, it will create its own pipeline, but it won't create the pipeline every time. It just does it the first time, and so it takes a minute longer to set up for Kubernetes to deploy the pods and scale up. But then following this, it'll work very quickly right away. I wanted to talk about these different spaces. I have a sandbox space, which I'm working at. I also have a published space if I want to share with, put things into production. And I can choose these different spaces. I can monitor the performance of different deployments and environments. I can get a dashboard where I can see my project snapshots and things like that. I can also see all my models here, model formats. You can see there's quite a few models that are going on in this environment. Okay, so now let's go back to Spotfire and let's take a look at this. So this was this has returned a result here. Let me close this and close this. So what we have is the what we're able to do is let's do a display value mod, and I'm going to set this up to look at that output table. So data table output, and I want it to be the average price of the predictions. So there's three different properties here. Let me just select one property, and what that's doing, you can see it really running really quickly here, is it's running that scoring flow through that pipeline, the scoring pipeline, and in ModelOps, and it's returning for me a prediction of this price of this home, this listing, and what it should be priced at. So just simply clicking on a certain value, I'm getting a prediction there. Or if, for instance, I want to see a few different properties, I can click a few different properties, and I'm getting a prediction across the average across all of these. I can also, if I want to see these in a table, I can see these in a table. Those are the individual properties and what they're worth.